For nearly 12 hours, every official record agreed on one simple fact. Daniel Mercer was inside a police detention facility. His arrival had been documented, his fingerprints scanned, his belongings inventoried, and his movements logged. According to officers, surveillance cameras, and detention records, he never left the building. Yet somewhere across the city, a bank security system recorded something impossible. At exactly 8:17 p.m., Daniel Mercer's debit card was inserted into an ATM. The correct PIN was entered on the first attempt. A cash withdrawal was approved, and within minutes additional withdrawals followed. By the time the bank's fraud monitoring software flagged the activity, nearly $6,000 had disappeared. The transaction logs appear routine. The ATM recorded no errors, no failed authentication attempts, and no signs of card cloning. Everything suggested the person standing at the machine possessed both the physical card and the correct PIN. But Daniel Mercer was sitting inside a detention cell. According to custody records, he had been there for almost 4 hours. The contradiction was immediate. If the records were accurate, Daniel could not have performed withdrawals. If the withdrawals were legitimate, the custody records had to be wrong. Investigators would soon discover that neither explanation fit the evidence. Hidden inside timestamps, surveillance footage, banking records, and detention logs was a far more disturbing possibility. Someone wanted authorities to believe Daniel Mercer was somewhere he physically could not be. What began as a simple fraud investigation quickly evolved into a case involving identity theft, manipulated narratives, stolen financial credentials, and a carefully constructed attempt to redirect suspicion. The deeper investigators looked, the more one question refused to disappear. If Daniel Mercer was locked inside a police facility, who was standing at the ATM? Daniel was 38 years old and worked as a regional logistics coordinator for a commercial shipping company. Friends described him as organized, predictable, and intensely private. His financial history reflected the same traits. For years, his bank account showed regular grocery purchases, utility payments, fuel expenses, and mortgage transfers. There were no large cash withdrawals, no unusual transfers, and no suspicious activity. The bank's behavioral monitoring systems had established a remarkably stable profile of his spending habits. On September 14th, Daniel was detained following a dispute connected to an ongoing investigation. Authorities transported him to the county detention facility shortly after 4 p.m. body camera footage documented the transport, vehicle GPS records confirmed the route, and booking logs recorded his arrival. During intake, officers collected his wallet, keys, mobile phone, and debit card. All property was sealed inside a numbered evidence bag and placed into secured storage. Multiple signatures documented the chain of custody. At least on paper, no one should have been able to access the card. At 4:41 p.m., Daniel completed booking. At 5:03 p.m., he underwent medical screening. At 5:19 p.m., detention cameras recorded him entering a holding area. At 5:31 p.m., officers finalized the custody paperwork. The timeline appeared airtight. Hours later, the first ATM transaction occurred nearly 11 miles away. Security cameras captured an individual approaching the machine shortly after sunset. The footage was grainy but usable. The person wore a dark jacket, a baseball cap, and a face covering. Nothing immediately stood out. The card was accepted, the correct PIN entered, cash dispensed, and the individual left. 42 minutes later, another withdrawal occurred at a second ATM, then a third, then a fourth. The pattern triggered internal fraud alerts, not because the transactions were technically invalid, but because they sharply contradicted Daniel's established financial behavior. He rarely withdrew cash, and when he did, the amounts were small. The sudden sequence of maximum limit withdrawals immediately drew attention. The following morning, fraud investigators attempted to contact him. Repeated calls went unanswered. His phone appeared inactive. Only later did they learn why. The device was still locked inside police property storage. That discovery transformed a routine fraud case into something far more serious. Every official record placed Daniel Mercer inside a detention facility, while someone else appeared to be moving through the city using his debit card. Investigators now face a mystery that could not be explained by a simple theft. Somewhere between the custody logs and the ATM surveillance footage, Someone had created a false trail. The money itself seemed almost secondary. What mattered was timing. Every withdrawal occurred while Daniel was undeniably in custody. Whoever used the card appeared less interested in stealing cash than in creating evidence. And as investigators began comparing banking records with surveillance footage, they discovered the ATM transactions had been carefully timed to tell a story, one that someone desperately wanted authorities to believe.